Hello, hello. This is the Aligned Birth Podcast. You have both hosts here today. Doula Rachel is joining me, Dr. Shannon, and we are talking about doulas, all things doulas. So Rachel is a doula. So we're going to talk about what Rachel does. But I think this is going to be really cool because I think you're going to be blown away by how many types of doulas there are. And we're going to get into the specifics of what these doulas do and how they can support you in a lot of areas of life. And you might be surprised, not just in birth. So that's what's kind of cool with this, is looking at how, looking at this as support people for lots of different things that go on in your life, and kind of walking steps with you, holding your hand and having the knowledge and ability to support you. So again, today is all about doulas. Welcome to the Aligned Birth Podcast. I'm Dr. Shannon, a prenatal chiropractor.
And I'm Rachel, a birth doula and childbirth educator. Together, we're here to bring you conversations about pregnancy, birth, and motherhood. From cesarean to VBAC, hospital to home births, we've experienced it all. We are high school friends who reconnected through our shared passion for health and birth. As moms to two young boys, we've both changed careers after our own transformative childbirth experiences.
Join us as we discuss the importance of a healthy body and mind throughout pregnancy, birth, and into motherhood. Our goal is to provide fun, interesting, and helpful conversations and interviews that inspire learning. When your body, mind, and intuition are aligned, you can conquer anything.
Sit back and relax, or grab a notebook and take some notes, or maybe listen as you enjoy a walk. However you choose to listen, we hope you enjoy this episode of the Aligned Birth Podcast. Before we get into the episode today, if you enjoy the content of this podcast, we would greatly appreciate your support in one of three ways. First, leave us a review or give us a 5-star rating. Your feedback helps us reach more listeners and make a bigger impact. Second, you can sign up for our newsletter. By doing so, you'll be the first to receive new episodes and exclusive bonus resources straight to your inbox each week. Lastly, you can become a direct listener supporter. Running this podcast requires significant time, effort, and resources. Your contribution, no matter the amount, helps us continue providing valuable content to a wider audience. Simply use the links in the show notes to make your donation, sign up for our newsletter, or leave us a review. Every contribution matters and is sincerely appreciated. If the Aligned Birth Podcast is a part of your weekly routine and you love what we are doing, please consider supporting us through one of these three options. Your support will create a ripple effect, allowing us to reach more listeners and make a lasting difference.
So excited to have you here today, Rachel.
Hey, Dr. Shannon. So excited for this conversation. Definitely, even in the research for this episode, I learned a lot of new things. Like you said, I'm a birth doula. I'm very familiar with birth doula, what they do, and postpartum doulas. But there are a plethora of other types of doulas. And my co-doula partner and I joke all the time that we need a doula for we're going to the doctor and we, have to make big decisions. We need a doula. Or, I need a doula for all these, anywhere where you're I just need an extra layer of support. I need informational support, emotional support, maybe physical support. It's that just is doula in a nutshell. But then getting very specific with some of these major life events where a doula can help you out. So that's the goal of this conversation, is to kind of shed some light on these other areas. So if you're going through something that we talk about here, you might consider reaching out and hiring a doula.
Exactly. And so most of these are birthy related. I say most of them. So all kinds of different aspects of different stages of birth, as far as labor and birth, after birth, but then when different things can happen in the pregnancy as well, you can have lots of these other support people. And so I feel I don't remember if we talked about the root word of doula. I can't remember. It feels like it's support. And then you put this word, whatever type of doula it is, in front of that. So you have labor support and postpartum support and those type of things. But again, this is going to be
doula and support could be interchangeable in my mind. Or sometimes I'm like, it's kind of like a coach and, a support system and just a servant in a way too. I mean, I think the root word is honestly something to do with being like a slave and a servant.
Yes.
But there is a very servant act in being a doula too. And it's serving in just a lot of different ways, and it's serving in a meaningful way. So to facilitate, a more informed experience, a more empowering experience, and just a more like held and whole experience so that you can get through some of these challenging things, good and bad and good and hard, with just more wholeness and more, satisfaction.
Well, and I think the support aspect of, I guess we'll talk about birth doula first. I feel like I was thinking of this when we were creating the outline for the show, in that when in labor and birth, it's very, you've got to get out, you've talked about this, you've got to get out of the frontal lobe and access like primitive brain. And so I think the doula can help do that, because they can maybe carry that frontal lobe load for you to allow you to surrender to birth in a way. But then also I feel like they're kind of like on your shoulder and kind of being like, remember when we talked about this, like to remind you so that you can stay more primitive or stay in that surrender state. So you can look at that in all aspects of the word as like that, I don't know, the little person behind you being like, hey, remember we did this, we've got this. Like, I don't know. That's what
it just helps you be exactly what you need to be in that moment. And with birth specifically, especially once you're in labor and in deep labor, you do go more into your primitive brain, and having a doula helps you surrender, because when you have to come in and out of your thinking brain, it makes it harder to fully surrender and let those amazing hormones flow freely. Because if we get too much in decision making, or too much in like fight or flight, too stressed, then it can slow or stop labor. And so doulas just help shoulder that burden, so that hopefully labor hormones can flow more freely, and you feel just overall more supported. So you're not constantly worrying about the next thing or a decision. If you do have a decision to make, we don't make those for you. We help work through, like, again, reminder, this is what you know. Like, we have to kind of just give you those gentle reminders of like, remember, this is what you learned. This is what we know to be true. This is the new information, reminding you to tap in and see how you're feeling on the inside, including your partner. If you have a support person, loved one, husband, friend, aunt, mother there with you, like looping them in. If you've chosen them to be in your birth space, it's all about including them and being a reassuring presence for everyone in the room, because we know birth really well. We're trained in birth. We're trained to know what's normal, safe, and healthy. And then we're also trained in like good, like facilitating communication between the clinical person. So your midwife or your doctor who you've hired to look after you and baby. In a medical sense, we're, trained to help facilitate communication so that there's no barrier there, because they have a very distinct role to serve, which is very important. And then we kind of just help bring it all together. And so, we've kind of gotten into quickly into
the meat of it. Sorry.
Birth doula is. No, I love it, because that's what I love to talk about. And I've been doing this for a long time, and I still have a hard time, like, really briefly and succinctly summarizing what a birth doula is. I mean, the cliche or the typical response is that informational, emotional, and physical support for pregnancy, labor, birth, and then that immediate postpartum. That's like birth doula. So that's something else I like to highlight, that being a birth doula isn't just about the birth, so much, at least about mine and my partner's model of support, is we want to get to work for our clients as soon as they hire us. So the sooner the better. And we're giving them information. We're setting up our meetings. Like, we are providing that like in between support via Voxer, which is like a walkie-talkie app, or text or email. Like, if they got questions, we want them to use us and all of our resources. So we're giving tons of support in the pregnancy, lots of education, lots of answering questions, because so many people, this is the first time they're going through it for a lot of people. So we're really helping dispel fear, boost confidence, give them good resources, evidence-based information, so that they can make the decisions for them that are best for them. And then by the time they get to the birth, like, they're ready to go. And then that's really
Mm-hmm.
more where our physical support comes in, as well as the informational and emotional for partner and mama. But so much of our work is done before the birth.
Mm-hmm. And some doulas will have childbirth education aspects. Not every birth doula does. There's different trainings, there's different certifications. I think we talked about that at some point later, but excuse me. Yeah, and I do want to mention that we have a couple of episodes about this. I think one of them you did, it was a solo episode. So episode 76, 5 benefits of labor doula support. I can't remember if that's a solo one or not, but that's one that you did. And then our episode 17, like way back in the beginning, episode 17, all about birth doulas as well. So yeah, so then another support person and another doula that you can have that is related to birth is more of, but like that postpartum time is going to be the postpartum doula. Now, a lot of birth doulas, I think you come to the house post baby being born and everybody back at the house, you still come and check in, but it's not, it's a different level of care that a postpartum doula specifically will provide. Is that correct?
Yep, that's 100% right. So
Okay.
again, part of the traditional model for birth doulas is that prenatal support, the labor and birth support, which is that physical comfort, again, providing information, shared decision making, protecting space, all of that, staying through that immediate postpartum for like a couple hours. And then we do a lot of virtual like text and boxer support for the first 12 weeks after they give birth. So that's our birth doula model and our how we do it. And then part of that is we go to the home within the first 1 to 2 weeks after they give birth, and we do like a 2.5 hour in-home visit with them, checking in on them, helping with feeding, debriefing the birth. And we also add in like if they need a little laundry folded or some dishes done, we kind of like, it's like a little peek into postpartum, like true postpartum support. But then specifically, postpartum doulas are different. They have a different training and they serve a different role. And like you said, they come into the home after the birth. Whenever you are ready for them to begin, we feel like it's most beneficial if you can have a postpartum doula come in that first one like week after giving birth to like 4 weeks, because really that's like when you are needing a lot of
High
support.
time.
And yeah, like your sleep is hard, feeding is hard, stress is high, like you're learning your new normal. So even if you have great family support, even if you've got good friends who are like, I'm going to bring you food or I'm going to come help out, that's great. They serve a role. And we help teach about, like as in our birth doula packages, help teach about how to use your family and your support in a effective way to truly like maximize your support. But postpartum doula, they're going to come in and facilitate rest, recovery, and bonding. So they are, you're not, ideally you're staying like in the bed and resting and focusing on feeding the baby and sleep and self-care, and the postpartum doula helps with everything else that as a new mom you might be worried about, or you might bring stress, right? Like who's preparing dinner or breakfast, or who is doing the dishes, who's doing the laundry, who's sweeping the floor, who's helping pull packages off my front porch and maybe unbox them and recycle and distribute stuff around the house, because that stuff just piles up in that immediate postpartum when you're at home and you're like just trying to figure everything out. So when you can have a postpartum doula who can take care of all those ancillary things, as well as provide care for the baby while you take a shower or you nap. So you have a trusted, trained professional in the home who maybe your husband is back to work, or you're single, or your husband's tired too. Like we want him to be focusing in on the bonding and the bubble and the like just taking care of baby and mom. And so we lighten that load. So it really benefits everyone in the house. We can meal, I say we, I'm not technically a postpartum doula. Postpartum doulas can meal prep and all of that. And they can also be there to help identify postpartum mood disorders. Are you struggling? Can they, they can definitely help process, but then they can also help say, hey, maybe it'd be helpful if you spoke to someone a mental health counselor and head off some of those postpartum mood disorders. And the quicker you can get help in that area, the better and quicker you'll feel. So they definitely are, they can help with lactation, so help with feeding, also provide recommendations for lactation support if needed. Like one of our postpartum doulas does massage, so you can get like an hour massage when she comes to see you. So really like as much self-care and support that you can get in that time is just going to help with your overall recovery. And then they're kind of modeling for the partner, for anyone else who comes in the home, what true postpartum support looks like. And then that just benefits you, everyone else. And so I think postpartum doulas are so valuable and worth their weight in gold, and definitely I think a lot of people underestimate the postpartum period and how hard it is, and how having true support, what that looks like. Like I'll reference Hannah, my doula partner's story, because she talked about, she was a postpartum doula and a birth doula before she gave birth to her biological child, but she had 3 bonus sons before that, right? So she had been in mother mode and caretaking and all of that. And so when her 4th was coming along, she was like, I got this, right? I've been a doula. I've been taking care of kids. And she got into it. And then she was like, and I had friends who were offering support. I had family who was offering support. And she felt like she got into it. And it was a bit like that support wasn't there, or wasn't there in the way she thought it would be, or she didn't know how to like tap into that support. And it just felt it felt harder than it should have. And so, because of that experience and her experience as a postpartum doula, we definitely believe in the value of that role and promote it. And we have postpartum doulas on our team, and share about that with our expecting families. And hopefully they, it is an investment. It's definitely not cheap, but this is where we like want to reframe what we're investing in when we're pregnant, like the gift giving. Like I would 10 times out of 10 recommend postpartum doula support over another onesie, or, and if you add up small gifts, you can equal what a postpartum doula package of like 20 or 40 hours might look like. And it might feel like, oh, there's no way I can do that. But if you fund it through like something like Be Her Village, that promote, helps support or helps curate registries that are more geared towards funding support. We'll put that link in there too. Like it just is flipping the script on how we're supporting new families and what we're spending money on for new moms. Like there's a disconnect there from that like true village support and just spending money on things as a way of providing support. You know what I'm saying?
Well, I feel like that's what it is with the postpartum doulas. If I had to pick like a few words, it would be true support and then true rest, as far as like those 2 main areas where they can plug in.
Yep.
And so I do think postpartum has the ability to slap you in the face and you don't really you weren't expecting it. So not that it has to be bad or anything like that, but
no, there's just some sort of like disconnect and like realistic expectations. And that's the slap in the face. It's not because it's terrible or so impossible. It's just that we're not prepared in a way that is painting a very realistic picture of it being very, very hard. You're exhausted, you're sleep deprived, your baby's feeding all the time. You're like figuring out how to take care of yourself. You're healing from a birth. Like that's a lot happening, and life is going on at the same time. Like bills are coming in, your house is still needing to take care of, like all that's still happening. And so, but we're not talking about it in a way that is preparing people truly so that when they get there, they don't feel slapped in the face. But Shannon, I see this all the time with because obviously I'm a birth doula. So we spend a lot of time prenatally with folks, and we definitely try and paint that picture about postpartum best we can. But I would say more times than not, people are more surprised by the postpartum than the birth. Like no matter even if the birth went whatever different way they weren't expecting, like that's one thing. But postpartum is always like, wow, I had no idea. And you really don't know until you're in it. And it is definitely, I know you agree, we're not trying to paint like a scary picture, but the more you can like see it as this brief, this finite amount of time, that if you prepare for it differently, that it can be a little bit easier to get through. Like I think that's all we're trying, all we try to say.
We just did that episode 2. I don't know when it's going to come out because it's recorded, but it's not out yet at the time we're recording this episode. Anywho, planning for postpartum.
Mm-hmm.
But that's why we did it, because it was, when you look at it, we do all this planning for birth, but birth is such a finite, like a tiny bit of time in your pregnancy and in that postpartum. And so maybe that's a little bit of why I was like, oh God, postpartum, it just keeps going.
Well, yeah, and really like the fourth
so it keeps
trimester
moving
is
on.
12 weeks. And it's called the fourth trimester because truly it's this extension of your pregnancy because your baby is still so dependent on you. Like our human bodies need to give birth to our human babies when they do, otherwise they get too big to be born. But they're born in this very infantile
Vulnerable.
state, very, very vulnerable and very much dependent on their caretaker. And they need love. They need a safe roof over and warm roof over their head. They need to be fed. They need to be held. Like all of this, like it's almost like an extension of your womb for those 12 weeks. And I know it's not like a 12 weeks and things switch. It can be a little bit shorter, a little bit longer, but that's a good, by that point, a lot of people are feeling like their legs are under them, fog is lifting, their baby's like a lot easier to take care of. But if we can view that postpartum as an extension of our pregnancy and kind of act in the same way, instead of like baby's here, now we have to return to normal. Because I think that's what we see a lot.
I think that's what we see in society or whatnot.
The dysregulation between, like, I thought the baby would be here and I'd be able to return to normal, whatever your version of normal is, quicker. I'd feel more like myself. I hear that all the time. I just don't feel like myself. And I'm like, girl, you're not. You are not yourself.
I was gonna look pregnant still for quite a bit of time.
You're going to look pregnant. You're going to feel your body.
What the crap is this? Yeah.
It's going to feel foreign for a while. And so again, if we can normalize that, it feels less disappointing and frustrating when you're in it.
Yeah.
So
they're valuable. Yes.
So valuable. And I could talk about it endlessly, but I know we have several more to cover. So
I know. So those are obviously the doulas the types of doulas that we talk about mostly on the show as well. But like we said, there's all kinds of other doulas. So what's another one we have? We have on our list the Antepartum Doula. So this is more guiding through high-risk pregnancies. Okay.
Yeah, so this is like,
let's learn about this.
Yeah, if you are, obviously you're pregnant, this is for pregnancy. This is like a doula specific for pregnancy only. And they are like, your pregnancy has been deemed high risk and maybe you're put on like bed rest, or, the gears have significantly shifted due to, various factors, right? But it's like you've been deemed high risk or need bed rest. And so this doula is going to help in that time specifically to provide that emotional and informational support. You're going to hear us say that a lot because that is like quintessential doula, is that emotional, like, let's process how you're feeling, a safe place to kind of share your thoughts, fears, questions, and then informational. So evidence-based resources to help guide your decision making based on whatever you're facing. So a good doula is help serve. A good doula is going to be able to go, if they don't know it, they're going to go track down an evidence-based article or a practitioner or someone who can help, further give you information. So that you don't, because imagine it's been determined you're a high-risk pregnancy. Maybe you're at risk for preterm birth or, whatever. What do you think moms stuck on bed rest are going to do? Yeah, they're going to Google. They're going to Google everything. And what is that going to do?
Google always makes you feel safe and calm and protected. I know, right?
Said no whenever.
You're going to Dr. Google. Yeah. No.
So we're like, stay off Dr. Google. So an antepartum doula in this scenario is going to help. They're going to be your go-to instead of Dr. Google. So that is hopefully going to help the fear stay down, help you stay in a more satisfying state, regardless of what you're facing. And they are also going to help you with collaborating with your care providers and your team and looking, helping you gather information in a informed and shared decision-making way. Because again, when you get to a state of like, okay, it's determined it's high risk, I'm at risk for XYZ, I'm on bed rest, you might feel like the doctors kind of have all the information, they're holding it all and they know everything, which they know a lot, but a doula is going to help you decipher that information and help remind you that you're still in the driver's seat here, regardless of being high risk. And that's just going to help you feel better about your whole experience.
It's going to decrease the stress, though, because every mom that I've worked with that's been on bed rest, it's stressful, especially if it's your, second or third baby, because, your other children aren't, on bed rest and they're not, going away or anything like that. So just looking at that stress response support too, and that aspect could be very, very beneficial.
And I thought it was cool with this specific antepartum doula, because this was a little bit new to me, because I would assume that like a lot of doulas could regular birth doulas could help in this role, but understanding that an antepartum doula has like more specific training in the high risk nature and the challenges you might be facing. So I think it's important to know that if you are going through that, I would seek specifically for someone who has, while I think a doula could still provide a lot of great support, just like if you're having like a VBAC or something, like I would really want you to search out a doula who has a lot of experience and maybe even a training specific to VBAC. So same thing with high risk pregnancies.
Exactly. Okay. So our next doula is, I think this is our one where it's not really about birth.
That's right.
It's not a birthy one, but still honing in on the word doula. This is an end of life doula, so companion on the final journey. So definitely, it's like the other end of the spectrum of life, So one doula helping bring forth, life, and the other one kind of walking through that end part, that end journey as well. So a little bit different there. A little bit different.
Very different, but similar. Like again, that the doula part, that informational, emotional support, helping guide, helping support, guiding family members who are, grieving the loss of a family member, just holding space is so beneficial. But I found a definition online because I wanted to have a very specific way to articulate it. So I would like to read that. An end of life doula helps the dying person explore the meaning of their life, create a personal remembrance project with loved ones, and plan for how the last days of life will unfold. The doula also finds ways to deliver the quality of life the dying person wants, given the circumstances of their life and their illness. It's very individualized, right? It's not just hospice, because some people might feel like hospice is the answer here, but this is very different. This is bigger. This is really looking at all involved. And I love the part where it says, deliver the quality of life the dying person wants. And because that's unique to everybody. So I think this is a beautiful service, and one that a lot of people probably don't consider, but from what I've heard and the people I've spoken to, the ones who do feel so good about it.
No, and that it sounds too like, again, not only support for that dying person, but then navigating the support that the family could need as well too, if other, loved ones are involved as well. So again, that support, word and servant word being used there as well. Okay. So back to our,
I was going to add to the part, I need to turn off a couple little things making noises on my computer. The other thing that an end of life doula helps with too is that legacy work and memorial planning. So that's interesting too. If you think about once you're gone, having a doula work with your family on things that you wanted to see carried out, or any sort of memorial that the family wants to put in place for you, a doula can also be a guide for that, which I think is tremendously helpful.
Yeah. So even extending past, the time of when the person was still here. So yeah. Again, I think that's neat. And I enjoy learning things on this show as well too. So, what do we have next? So miscarriage doula. I had mentioned this one when we were, talking about the outline, because, and again too, I hadn't heard of this type of doula until I had a patient who, a lot of times I think sometimes, a lot of birth workers get into the birth worker field from their own personal experience. And so she is a miscarriage doula now, just knowing what she went through, and then it informs like how they kind of what the support was that they needed. So I think this can be I've referred quite a few moms to miscarriage doulas as well too. So it's some of this stuff I want to it's you've got the mental health counselors as well too. You've got that component. So it's not like a doula is replacing that, but the training is different. You know, you're going to a counselor and maybe it's just an hour session there and you're getting those tools to help you manage your world when you're not with that therapist or anything. But then you also have this dual aspect where it holds your hand a little bit more. It's the same thing with birth though. When like the doctor comes in, the doctor is only there, you know, helping baby be born, but they're not walking you through and like, hey, have you tried this position? Like they ain't got time for that. So that's where that doula person comes in. So it's kind of, I don't want to say like the doula is going to replace like any sort of mental health aspect of things as well too.
Nope.
So
no, they're going to be good for referring to mental health counselors though.
Exactly. When it's like
they're a
we
trusted
need extra
person
support
who has, you know, usually vetted referrals and references for quality maternal health mental counselors. So that's the benefit of a doula, is that they are going to point you to that person. They are not replacing that person. They can hold space, they can process and be a good listening ear. Again, a trained professional to listen and provide you know, support in that way, but then knowing when it's appropriate to refer out. That's what a good doula does. They don't try and replace at all. And I think also different like doula, miscarriage doula to like, if you think at all your care provider, I mean, unless they're like a home birth midwife who's supporting you through a miscarriage, like traditional medical model of care provider is not, even if they're a hospital-based midwife, not really providing any additional support above and beyond any sort of clinical care you need for your miscarriage. I've had a miscarriage and was with a practice that I really felt like I trusted, and they were, I don't know how to describe the lack of empathy and support. And I think it's because they see it all the time. We know how common it is.
People, and yeah, they see it, but
so it's just like they did what they had to do clinically. But I was, gosh, a doula would have benefited me tremendously. But like the idea that they can come into your home even and help with any sort of rituals and blessings that you want, or just to talk, or just to hold space, gently guide you through a very, very difficult time that is so misunderstood and so under talked about. That
but it's so common. It's so common.
It's so common. And then
I would say,
well,
I don't even know how many % of women that come in the office who are pregnant have experienced a miscarriage. Because I ask it on
1
my
in
forms.
4. Yeah, I mean, it's 1 in 4. It is a common thing, but that doesn't, just like giving birth is a common thing, but like if it doesn't make it any less important going through it, right?
Exactly.
But miscarriage has this like veil over it of not really talked about, not, you know, we don't get like support for time off of work or
yeah, that's what's weird, because I'm like, it's so common, but that doesn't make it not, I guess not traumatic, but like, you know what I mean? Like
it's a major event.
Yeah, it's a major event.
It's a major event that necessitates support, education, what's happening inside of your body. Your body is still pregnant, right? Like, especially if you're waiting on that. And I guess we will put maybe a disclaimer at the top of the show notes as we're talking about this. But, you know, your body is still pregnant until it passes, you know, and miscarriage can happen naturally, but sometimes it has to be medically induced, and you're pregnant until that baby is no longer in your womb. But then even after that, your hormones are balancing out. So you're still going through like, it's not like you have a miscarriage and you're done. Back to yourself.
Yeah,
like
no.
Your boobs still might feel tender. You might have cramps. You might feel bloated. Like you're going to have hormone fluctuations. Like you might still have a need to pee all the time because of the hormones. Like a number of things happening that aren't like just a switch and you're back to yourself. So like, and I guess I don't want to go too far into it, but like if you need clinical help with your miscarriage, like if sometimes there are lots of options that might come up if your body isn't passing it on its own. And so having education around that and you're not getting it always from your care provider, and knowing that you can ask questions, you can slow the process down. Again, autonomy, shared decision making, this all still matters as you're going through this journey. So having the right kind of support can definitely ease the stress. It doesn't take it away or the grief, but it can definitely help.
And the next, so the miscarriage one, the next like 3 doulas that we're talking about are, we're going to do our little trigger warning disclaimer aspect of things, are a little bit on that miscarriage, infant loss, pregnancy loss side of things. But we want to talk about it because we want people to understand that there is support out there, like, and you may not have realized it. So kind of in someone in line with that miscarriage doula is that there's also abortion doulas. So for advocacy, compassion. Again, too, this can be a hot button topic for people. So we are sharing information for anyone that needs it. But these moments and these times that you have in that pregnancy, it's very, very emotional, so whatever is going on, and knowing that you have someone to reach out to, not to make decisions for you, but to help you advocate for yourself and give you support as well too, as you navigate this for whatever reason. I mean, you could have had a genetic counseling appointment, and this is, there's a lot to navigate with that. We're not going to we can't dive too deep into that, in this episode, but there's a lot of different reasons there, and knowing that there are support people out there with the specific training that you could possibly need or want, in that time period too. So,
yeah. And it harks back to that physical, informational, and emotional support during this time. For whatever reason, an abortion is needed or determined, you've made that choice, whatever, like, you still need this guidance. And so an abortion doula is going to provide that advocacy and compassion above and beyond your medical care provider, knowing, similar to what I just shared about like the miscarriage, of like, there's so much more to it. What's happening with your body, the lead up to it, the process itself, and then the post-abortion emotional support and follow-up care. Again, your body's still going through a lot, and you need that kind of support. And this is another topic that has a veil over it, that doesn't get talked about in a compassionate way always, or in a empathetic way. And so an abortion doula is trained and support, and has the support experience of guiding people through this very specific type of life experience that needs very individualized care. And so whether it's for you or not, knowing that it's even there is what our goal is just to know that, like, if you have to go through this, you can seek additional support so that the experience can be as trauma free as possible and as supported as possible, so that you can be as whole and healthy on the other side. Because that's what we care about, is that women, new mothers, people, partners, families can go through these major life events and come out as whole on the other side as possible, not left. It's already hard enough. Exactly. Like, we don't need to compound it by ignoring it.
And again, in line in this little section that we have of doulas, there's the bereavement doula or loss doula as well too, a little bit of healing through grief. This is doula who walks with, supports, helps families who are experiencing the loss of their baby, whether it's through miscarriage, stillbirth, diagnosis, whatnot. So a little bit different there than the miscarriage as well. So again, a very honed in specific skill set of support that that is available. I mean, that's again the point of why we want to talk about this, is to know,
Right.
There's more support out there besides the providers.
So a bereavement doula or a loss doula can help with miscarriage. So it also covers, miscarriage doula is going to be a specific for miscarriage, whereas bereavement doula or loss doula can help with miscarriage, but then they also help with stillbirth, or if it's been determined that your baby's not going to live very long after they've been born. So it helps navigate the complexities of this mourning and grieving process and helping find healing, help finding resources, referrals, again, mental health counselors, blessing services or rituals, or, a lot of people who go through this process will like commemorate their child. And so they have a bereavement doula is going to help you find those organizations that can help you memorialize your baby in the best way possible and in a way that aligns with your preferences and needs. Again, this type of doula is going to be talking to you in a very individualized way, whereas like a clinician might be more, again, they're focusing on the clinical side of things. This type of doula is still going to look at you and ask you very individualized questions to get to know you and figure out exactly what kind of support you need in this moment, and provide those resources along the way. So I think that's one of my biggest takeaways to this, is knowing that like you have people who might walk through this process with you on the clinical side, and then you have family, but then family, as well-intentioned as they are, typically don't know how to support someone through loss like this unless they've been through it themselves. And even if they've been through it themselves,
intimately involved, like, it's not, it could be beneficial to have someone that is not so
yes, they need the support too.
Exactly.
They need the support too. And even if someone has been through it, that can come with its own level of complexities too, because you might have someone who reaches out who wants to help, but then they end up like trauma dumping, like, or sharing their experience, and that could be triggering. Like,
yeah,
if you're just going through it. So knowing kind of that a doula isn't going to do that, and that they're trained very specifically in how to support people through this. And that's what we need. And I love the modeling aspect of how doulas help in this way for the family and friends who are in that intimate space.
Okay, so next we have another, I guess, little aspect. I guess they kind of like bubble of, okay, these type of doulas are somewhat similar. There's the adoption doula. So helping bring forth the new little one or older one, into your world. Because that can be a really big shift and change. The adoption process in and of itself can be complex. There's lots to it. And so having support in that as well too, because there's so many different levels to the adoption process, as far as, where you're adopting from, everything, even like, fostering, did you do that first, and all of that. So looking at someone that can help, again, the emotional support and guidance there, because it's just it's a lot to handle, I think, for couples, for that nervous system. And especially too, we've talked about, you may have family around. If you don't have family, then yes, definitely wanting that extra support. If you do have family around, it's nice to have someone who gives the meaningful support as well too. So
again, an adoption doula can be for the birthing person, for the birth mother, and or for the adoptive family. And an adoption doula can support a mother who's giving birth,
receiving and giving.
Yeah. And so, and a regular, normal birth doula doesn't have that specific training for the emotional and even informational processes that are happening with this type of situation. So a very specific doula can help the birthing person so that their experience, right, Matt, I can't, like, it's like a major event for that person to give birth and then give their baby over to a new family. And then your body's still going through birth. And then what comes after birth, you still have postpartum, you still have everything that comes after that. So an adoption doula can help you navigate that entire process in a very unique and individualized way. And then on the flip side, you're the adoptive family, right? Helping you navigate the processes, but then also providing that informational and emotional support to you too, as you're welcoming a new baby into your life. And that transition.
It's a lot.
Like,
it's a transition on both sides.
It's a lot on both sides, and counseling after the fact for both families. They can at least be a starting launching point for getting good counseling. So
right.
that, again,
and the resources,
whole and healthy,
all the resources.
Yep.
And then we have a fertility doula. For expecting families, an infertility journey can be exhausting. I suppose that's one way to put it.
Exhausting,
um,
frustrating,
just
emotional,
yes, it
disappointing,
can be.
exciting. Like
Uh-huh. It's
it's a roller
it's like a roller
coaster.
coaster. That's what I was about to say. I was
Yeah.
like, sounds up and down, up and down, up and down. And that can also be a lot to manage and handle. And so again, they can provide the resources that you might need. They could provide the emotional support, um, physical support as well too, because you with most infertility journeys, if you are going, whether it's IUI or IVF or whatnot, there's a lot of I guess like external things
Hmm.
happening to
Hmm.
whoever is going to be giving birth. And so you're kind of like, your body has to, I don't know, you have to accept those things too, injections and all of this. And so it's a
To the
lot.
point where you feel like you're not
You're
yourself.
not yourself. Mm-hmm.
And that like you're just this, like you're being poked and prodded and assessed and examined, and you chose this, you want this, all you want's a baby, but like there's a lot that can get lost through that process if not supported in a meaningful way.
Mm-hmm.
um and so understanding the conception process, understanding all the different types of fertility treatments, like I know some basics, but there's no
Yeah.
way as a doula that I could help someone through
Mm-hmm.
that journey without that specific training and experience. So understanding it can be really helpful to have someone who has that experience. Also, it's health education. Like what's happening inside of your body hormonally, physically, with your ovulation and your cycles and tracking and IVF treatments and shots. And like you said, there's just a lot to learn educationally. And then, like always, navigating your options, right? Things have come up, something's been presented. A infertility doula is going to help you assess, like gather the
Mm-hmm.
information, help you decide what's right for you, not tell you what to do, but help you decide through informed and shared decision making.
Mm-hmm. And I wonder too, so now I think about it, because I've had a couple of friends on the surrogacy route, and so I bet
Hmm.
too that it would fit in here as far, and maybe that aspect of the adoption or fertility doula
Mm-hmm.
as well too. So I'm
Yep.
sure that there's an
Oh, there
aspect
might
of
even be
that. There
surrogate
might be, I know, it
doulas.
just dawned on me,
Yeah,
as
there
far
could be, because that's
as
its own
it's
experience
its own
too. Feels
experience.
like it's somewhere
Hmm.
between these two, but I'm sure they
Exactly.
have
Yeah.
surrogate specific.
Yeah. So there's that
Yeah,
as well. See, there's
yeah,
lots of different things. So we had birthy ones and then a non-birthy one, but some happy ones and
yeah,
some sad ones,
yeah.
it's there.
I know I don't want to ever shy away from the complexities and the
Hmm.
hard parts of life, and we like to bring light to these hard times by sharing that there are resources and people and
Hmm.
information and education out there that can make hard times a little bit easier and help you again feel whole and healthy on the other side of this. And that is our end goal. And so hopefully if you've heard something here that you could either share with a friend or use yourself, like that's our goal. Even if it's a hard thing, like I'm not going to shy away from talking about the hard things just because they're hard. Like that's the
Hmm.
issue with a lot of these things. That's why we need these specific doulas, is because they're not part of our everyday conversation, and they don't have to be, but for a lot of people this is their normal. And so having access to these services should be standard and more commonly talked about, but that's the goal here.
Hmm.
And
And
I
they
know we
do go
also,
through training and certifications.
yeah,
Like there
yeah,
are going to be certain things that doulas are going to have. And so that's why with each of these specific ones, they're going to have, specific training and the set of skills so that they can provide the best support for whatever you've got going on.
yeah. And that is why I wanted to mention the training and certification part, because with doulas, like technically anyone can call themselves a doula, so you have to be kind of careful. You have to know what you want to look for in a well qualified doula versus just someone who's saying they're a doula, because there's no like governing body like there are with nurses and doctors. And I'm not saying we need that, because there are some downsides to that as well. But knowing that there isn't, and so you have to be
Hmm.
responsible as the consumer, as we should be with even doctors and nurses and all things, of doing your own research and
Yeah.
asking good questions and interviewing several different doulas to figure out which one meets your needs and aligns with you and has the right qualifications that you're looking for. So some things you want to look for is that they've done a program specific to the type of doula work that they're doing, that they've trained, done like a workshop, usually with those programs comes lots of reading. So like reading lists, training in lactation, training with newborns, training with basic childbirth education. And all of this is sort of specific to the type of doula that they're becoming. Actual hands-on support with clients, that they have a good networking resource list for your community, that those are vetted resources, not just ones they've gone on Google and copy and pasted. It's like actual vetted resources that they have, typically they've done business training, that they've written essays, that they have written references, referrals, reviews about their work. That's huge. And, if being certified is important to you as the consumer, you can ask about their certification. And then I love the question of like ongoing education, because once you've done these things, it doesn't mean you're done. So a good doula typically is very excited about ongoing education, and they strive for that on a regular basis. You can always ask like about that so these are just tips for like from the consumer side.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So hopefully you have learned about, types of doulas. I know I did. That's always fun with these shows. I definitely learned.
I mean, and it's a
new
rich
types of
and
doulas.
diverse
Mm-hmm.
community
Mm-hmm.
who provides so many different services to a huge portion of our population that needs it, and how they can help like navigate these major life transitions. Like I just can't say it enough. And I was very lit up by doing the research for this, because while I'm a doula, I'm not these other types of doulas. So I learned a lot through this process, and we hope you have as well. And, we definitely want to encourage you, if you're curious, if you were going through any of these life events where a doula can help you, we encourage you to explore your options and try to find someone who can help you.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for joining us on the Aligned Birth Podcast. We hope you found our discussions informative, inspiring, and enjoyable. Remember, when your body, mind, and intuition are aligned, you have the power to overcome any challenge that comes your way. We appreciate your support and leaving a review or rating, signing up for our newsletter, or becoming a direct listener supporter. Your contribution helps us continue delivering valuable content and reaching more listeners like yourself. Stay connected with us through our newsletter to receive the latest episodes and bonuses straight to your inbox each week. You can also connect with us on Instagram at aligned_birth. All links can be found in the show notes. Together, we can make a difference in the lives of the birthing individuals and new moms. Thank you for being a part of our community. We look forward to sharing more empowering conversations on the Aligned Birth Podcast. Until next time.